Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. Today's video, we're going to be doing a patch 10.2 notes rundown. So I'm super excited to do this one. We're going to be talking about how these changes on this patch go to solo queue and stuff like that for some of you guys who are just looking for that. But also, this is the first patch notes rundown that we've done in a while where we can seriously talk about pro play, because this will be a patch with pro play implications. Obviously 10.1 is important, but 10.2 it's going to have some stuff going on with that as well. This is a relatively small patch. I haven't read super deep into it. I've just looked over a little bit before filming this, but we're going to be diving deep into it right now. So with that out of the way, let's just get right into it. All right, let's look at the champion changes. So aphelios has a couple changes here. He's probably going to be, they've been having trouble balancing this champion. So aphelios is a weird champion. He's like a standard hyper carry, like like Jinx or something like that, right? Who has trouble into dive in the early game and stuff like that. It's just aphelios. Sometimes it seems like his numbers are a little bit overtuned, that if he gets dove by an assassin who's equally as strong as him, he just 1v1s the assassin a lot of times, and that's pretty weird and probably not healthy for the game. So they're tuning his numbers a little bit so he can fall in line a little bit better with a champion like Jinx, who has some clear disadvantages in picking the champion. Like, you do really poorly into dive, especially in the early game, but you have some really good scaling into the later game. So they're trying to tune aphelios' numbers to hopefully fit like the hyper carry playstyle, rather than just I annihilate you if you jump on me because my numbers are overtuned. So basically what's happening here is they're just knocking down his numbers just a little bit, right? So the base damage on here is 15 base, and then a lower attack scaling right there, right? So that's a pretty big nerf. Cooldown is nerfed by 2 seconds at max rank. The more important one is middle rank. It's also 2 seconds. Actually, middle rank is 1.5 seconds. Basic attack damage slightly lowered later on the attack, it looks like. Yeah. Cool. And then Severum Scythe Pistol, the lifesteal one, is being nerfed just a little bit. Important number, just scaling, right? Just a scaling. So they're just tuning down his numbers. So I think Riot's really having trouble finding how to actually tune his numbers to where he falls in line a little bit closer to champions, like Jinx or something like that, standard hyper carry champion. Cool. So Draven's getting a little bit of a buff. So Whirling Death is getting a buff. So they're adding attack ratios, higher attack ratios on the higher ranks you put it in, because the big issue with playing Draven is he doesn't scale quite as well as, some hyper carry champions like, aphelios, like Jinx, stuff like that. And just kind of gets it done in the early game. But this just adds a little bit extra scaling into him. So if you're already playing Draven, then Draven's going to be good. This is a good buff for Draven. Right, so if you're already playing Draven, then you're already playing Draven. If you weren't already playing Draven, I don't think this is enough to warrant just picking the champion because you think it's OP or something like that. But if you're already decent at Draven, this is just a really nice buff, and the spots where Draven was good is going to be good as well. As far as pro play goes, there's a couple Draven players, especially in the LCK. I believe Ghost is a Draven player. So they have a couple Draven players over there in some situations where they want to pick Draven. So this is just better now. So just a little nice buff. They got to sell them Mecha Kingdom skins, stuff like that. So they gave Draven a little nice buff right here. But again, if you're already playing Draven and you already liked playing him, this is just a really nice buff to help with the scaling a little bit, for those late game fights and, for those dragon steals, stuff like that in the late game. Then this is going to be nice. And then as far as pro play, for the players who are already playing Draven, it's kind of the same. There's more situations where they can pick them. There's not a whole lot of Draven players in pro play, but there are some. All right, cool. Jinx. So Jinx is now going to be able to get excited off of epic monsters as well. So this is kind of like the Draven buff, where this doesn't necessarily make Jinx like crazy strong or anything like that. It's just, if you're already playing Jinx, this is a little nice buff right here, right? So her get excited passive that you normally just get off of turrets and champions and inhibitors, you now get it off of Baron and Dragon and Rift Herald. So that's going to be pretty cool for those earlier game fights. I think this is a really cool change for pro play that teams can actually play around a little bit more. So in situations where picking Jinx would be okay, it's going to feel a little bit better for those early game fights. So it's actually a pretty important change for pro play, I think. I think it's enough for people to think about picking Jinx, whereas in the past people wouldn't even think about it, except for, you know, a couple times I've seen Deft play Jinx in the past year. But the situations where you might want to pick Jinx, it's going to feel a little bit easier to sneak that in and pick Jinx, because you're actually going to be able to fight for those dragons. Because if your team gets the dragon, Jinx getting excited at the beginning of a team fight is actually pretty impactful. So do I think this makes Jinx OP or anything like that? No, but I think it's enough to make it to where teams will think more about picking the champion, and think more about situations where this champion can be picked, whereas in the past this champion has been picked for quite a while. All right, cool. Karma. She keeps getting changed, man. I love Karma, and I really wish they would stop changing this champion, honestly. Helping out Karma's early ability to scrap against her opponents, because they're like trying to get her out of mid and top lane. So they nerf her numbers and stuff, right? But then she's bad in support. When you nerf her numbers, super bad. So then they have to bring up her numbers, and then if you bring up her numbers in support, she's going to be good in soloing again. So I think they should just stop trying to... I know it sucks. I know people hate playing against Karma in top lane and stuff like that, but I really think they just need to stop. Just stop. Just understand that she's going to get played in the solo lane, especially in pro play. Like, because she has so much utility, she's going to be played in the solo lane. And if you want her to have a spot, she's got to have a spot. Like, if you want her to be a support champion, you want her to be balanced correctly, she's got to be able to be in the solo lane as well. That's just how her kit is. It's weird. Okay, base damage. So the important one, since you max this, is the third rank, 180. So it's just 10. It's just 10. Yeah, it's just 10 at all ranks. That's nice. That's a little nice, especially in the early game. That 10 extra damage is pretty nice. Okay, W. Base damage is up 10 at rank 1. Rank 3 is 10. It's just 10. This is not a super impactful change, but maybe the difference between, you know, combination of this is 20 damage, right? 20 bonus damage if you hit both abilities on somebody, which is nice. They didn't change the scaling because they took scaling out of her Q, which I think is fine. So I think these are actually good changes for balancing her as a support champion. Upping base values, but lowering scaling, which they did on a couple patches ago. They lowered the scaling on her Q. So I don't mind this change at all. This is nice. It's a nice little buff for Karma. Cool. Whew. Okay. So Lulu's getting her base stats up. This is not meaningful at all. This is neat because her cooldown is going to be reduced by 2 seconds on her E, which is part of her poking tools and stuff like that. So this just makes her a little bit better, but it doesn't make it to where she's meta, like, versus Leona and stuff like that, you know? A Leona Nautilus champions that are super brain dead. But this buff is a little bit nice. So if you're already playing Lulu, then I guess this is nice. It's going to be interesting if we start seeing some solo laner Lulus with some specific teams who like to just buff up their hyper carry. So it seems like they're buffing a lot of stuff that is good for buffing hyper carries. So that's kind of interesting. I think this change is not very meaningful at all, at least for now. But it could be one of those changes where we see like 3 patches later that we have a bunch of changes that compound, that end up making enchanters good or something like that. Dredgeline. So Nautilus's Q is getting nerfed, just the base damage, which is nice, I guess. So it's 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. So that's just nice, right? But that's not, this isn't what makes Nautilus OP. Nautilus just, I do like they're taking damage out of his kit, because Nautilus just does so much damage. It's crazy. It's crazy. So much damage on his passive, so much damage on his W, and on his E, and on his ultimate. And he's just so tanky, man. And the hitbox on your Q is the, like, you know, as big as a truck, like as big as Morgana Q. It's kind of crazy. I guess just a nice change, you know, taking a little bit of damage out of his kit, but so I guess that's nice. But I don't think this does anything to, if you're playing Nautilus, he's good, and in pro play, he's still going to be great. A lot of the 80 carries that are good also combo really well with Nautilus. So Kiana, so they're nerfing the passive attack speed, which you're not going to feel this that much in lane, except for a Tiamat build. So if you're building Tiamat and you're looking for like really clean auto cancels in lane, which Tiamat build is really common on Qiyana, then you'll feel that a little bit in lane. This is mainly a nerf to jungle. And this is a really heavy nerf to jungle. Qiyana in solo queue in the jungle was already kind of suffering. It was okay, but was already kind of suffering a bit. And then in pro play, they would try to flex this pick a lot. And every single time you'd see it flex, it definitely looked better mid lane. But Qiyana was just such an overtuned champion that it was okay. But with this nerf right here, it's pretty substantial because you don't put points into this early. You put points into your queue. So it's going to be at 5% for quite some time. Until like rank 9, something like that. And then it'll be like 15%. And you normally don't really put in that much points into this anyway. So I really think jungle Qiyana is a lot worse. So this is a kind of meaningful change for jungle Qiyana. For like mid and top lane Qiyana, this is slightly impactful, but not that crazy. It does make your combos feel a little bit less smooth if you're trying to weave in autos, especially with Tiamat build. Cool. Sona is getting a buff. So this is a pretty nice buff. So base value is 10% to 14%. It's just going to be base value 25% with additional scaling, because this ability blows. Let's be honest, guys. Like, you don't ever feel this. I remember whenever like Overwatch came out, and I think everybody played Overwatch right when it came out. Nobody plays it anymore, but right when Overwatch came out, I remember thinking like, oh, Lucio is just like Sona. But why is Lucio so broken and Sona's E ability is like nothing? Like the speed boost is so broken. And I always thought about that a lot. So this is a really, really nice buff right here. So they're buffing a lot of the enchanters because the engage supports are way too broken. I don't know how meaningful these changes are going to be. I know a lot of people are looking at this and thinking like, oh no, Sona Taric. The issue with Sona Taric is you lose complete prio bottom side. But with the changes to Rift Herald, and I really think there's legitimate strategies on playing for solo lanes and not giving a fuck about Dragon. Sacking the first 2 dragons, getting both Rift Heralds, I really think is a legitimate strategy. Buff up your solo lanes, you run a 1-3-1, and then you're so strong that you get they'll never get soul. You can sack the first 2 dragons as long as you win the game, right? As long as you win the fights, because the individual dragons are worthless, bro. They're worthless. And Rift Herald was already so broken and it's about to get buffed. So, if teams are actually willing to play out those strategies, then this can really buff Sona Taric. Like, Sona Taric can be a thing again. I don't know about Sonatone Pinch, but honestly, guys, it boils, yeah, oof. In solo queue, it would be so hard to play Sona Taric. In solo queue, it'll be so hard to play Sona Taric because people would just continue to dive int for Dragon. We'll seriously continue to dive int for Dragon. The Dragons could be nerfed like a million times, and people still dive int for Dragons. So, cool. So this is just a bug fix for Pulsefire and the bug fix for Pulsefire. Okay, these are just visual effects. Cool. All right, Trundle is getting buffed. Okay, Trundle has been suffering all around, but especially when allies have to rely on him for ganks. Cool. Movement speed. I feel a nice movement speed and nerf on the Pillar of Ice. This is really nice right here because you have the movement speed increased by 10 at rank 1. Because a lot of times you'll end up maxing E second rather than W. So this 10% right here is really, really nice actually, because you end up not maxing this until level 18, you know, a lot of times, especially in competitive play. So this is a nice little buff. I really think Trundle is going to be a very good pick in professional play. I really think Trundle is going to be a very good pick, especially if teams are going to pick champions like Set. I don't know how strong Set's viability is for pro play, but a champion like Set, Trundle would be very good into, right? Sejuani just got a couple buffs, you know, the age-old matchup of Trundle versus Sejuani. Trundle and Olaf, stuff like that. So I really think Trundle has a place in the meta, and these changes are really nice. It's going to be hard to blind pick Trundle, but it really has a place in the meta. And especially if teams are going to be willing to play around Rift Herald and stuff like that a little bit more, then teams are going to be more willing to pick for solo lanes. And if teams are more willing to pick for solo lanes, then you'll start to see Sejuani pop up, because Sejuani counters combos so well with solo lanes, like Yasuo, like Aurelia, like Camille. I think Aurelia is in a really bad spot, but Camille and Yasuo are in a fine spot. and you'll start to see or Renekton, stuff like that. You'll start to see comps like that pop up, and when comps like that pop up, champions like Trundle are very good because Trundle shits on those champions. Cool. And solo queue, if you're already playing Trundle, it's just a nice little change, but all right. Victor, passive. Victor no longer loses a significant amount of mana if he upgrades. Oh, it's just a bug fix. Okay. So Ziggs is getting a bunch of buffs, so this is kind of weird. I don't think these are meaningful. They might be, but he's getting a little bit extra damage on his Q. Knockback is increased a little bit of distance, which is nice. And then the slow is increased. So his ability to peel himself is greatly increased, is the main focus of this. Green Ziggs is a stronger way to disrupt opponents and encourage a greater presence in the early game. It's solo queue if you're playing Ziggs. Cool, awesome. This is nice, but hardly anybody plays Ziggs. As far as professional play goes, I think it's really hard for a champion like Ziggs to become meta. I think there's specific teams and specific setups you could possibly run, just like full like poke mage mid lane and full prio bottom lane like an MF or something like that. In very specific situations, you could just get full prio on the mid and bottom side and just look for objectives, right? I think there's situations where that could be okay, but to be very niche. The problem is that Ziggs is so bad into so much of the meta, so much of the assassin, so much of that stuff, which is good. But Ziggs is very good at controlling lane. You could also see some situations where Ziggs totally just goes bottom lane with specific teams, but I don't think this is enough to make Ziggs viable. I think it's really hard to make Ziggs viable with all the dive champions and all those things that are so strong. I think it's hard. But the door is open a little bit more for a champion like Ziggs to be able to do something. I think this is a meaningful change, but I don't know if it actually amounts to anything. A lot of things with pro play, by the way, guys, it's just the pro teams just decide to do it. A lot of things will be strong for a really long time, and teams just have to decide to want to do that strategy, have to decide to invest time into learning how to do this. Think about Urgot. Urgot was super strong for an entire season, and he didn't get played into Worlds. And then he was the best champion of the game at Worlds 2 years ago. All right, so Cloak of Agility is getting nerfed, so 5% is taken off of this 20% build right here. So the critical strike is reduced. That is because a lot of people were just building 4 of these and getting 100% crit chance, and that was more gold efficient than actually building full items. And then you would build full items off of your Cloak of Agility. So yeah. So this is mainly a nerf for pro play and high level play where people were kind of cheesing this build a little bit. So now you won't be able to do that. Cool. Frozen Heart is getting plus 10 plus 10 armor. It's nice. I don't know if this sends us over the top for champions. I wanted to build this. This is pretty nice on Trundle, who just got buffed. It's pretty nice on Olaf. It's pretty nice on, it's nice on tanks, right? The 20% CDR. I don't know if this is enough to make you want to pick this over a Thornmail or a Randuin's or something like that, because those have more utility because they basically have a lot of the same passive as Frozen Heart, right? With the Cold Steel, but doesn't have the CDR and all that good stuff. So this is just a nice little buff because nobody was voting Frozen Heart. Stormrazor is getting reduced in 5 damage. Nice little nerf. It was just way too good on so many people. You'd see so many people build it who you wouldn't think it would be good on, right? I've seen a lot of Lucian builds with Stormrazor added onto it, which you would not think this is a good Lucian item, but the damages on this item are just a little overtuned, just a lot of burst on it, so they're going for like a more burst build type of stuff. So a little nice takedown on the damage is a little bit nice. I do enjoy this. Okay, Rift Herald is getting changed. Let's go. All right, Rift Herald change. So Rift Herald was already super good. It was already super good to build comps around prioritizing this, and it's really hard to do in solo queue because everyone's just going to int for dragons, right? It is so hard to do Rift Herald in solo queue because everybody's just going to ping dragon constantly. Obviously you can do Rift Herald, but to like build a strategy around getting the Rift Heralds, a lot of times your team will not understand if you want to do this. Rift Herald is so good, man. But they're nerfing the damage or its health quite significantly, so you can clear it a lot quicker. So you can clear it a lot easier. So it's pretty nice. So as I said, this buffs the strategy, the counter strategy to the meta of everybody picking prio, bot, and mid to actually making your bottom lane your weak side lane and sacking the dragons for Rift Heralds and making it to where your solo lanes are unlaneable for the enemy, and you just blow up the game that way and snowball. So this even further buffs that strategy. So I really think some teams will start to look at this, start to look at prioritizing Rift Herald over dragons, sacking the first 2 drakes, and playing for getting their solos ahead, and playing for like 1-4 or 1-3-1, or maybe not just play for split push, maybe just get their solos ahead and have a team fight composition. Then you get the later dragons, right? And you'll have so much gold in your pocket that they can't fight you over Baron and over the next dragons and stuff like that. I really think teams are going to start looking at that. In NA and stuff like that, I don't know. The spring season in NA and LEC in spring season, all the teams are really awful usually, and they just try to play whatever is the most brain dead strategy. So I don't know how many people are going to be looking for 1-3-1s and 1-4s right now. But this is a buff to that strategy, and that's definitely going to pop up. If it doesn't pop up soon, it's going to pop up, and that's going to be a prevailing strategy for playing League. Mark my words, brothers. Cool. So bug fixes, a bunch of bug fixes. The only one that's really notable is the Caitlyn bug changes. There's a ton of Caitlyn bug changes. So basically, you know, everybody's seen like the machine gun Caitlyn things. A lot of those were bugs. Legit were bugs. Like you could do your headshot for both your E and your trap at the same time, and it would do 2 headshots. So you can't do that anymore. You could do the headshot while you were CC'd. Can't do that anymore. And I don't know if it changes where you could do a headshot while you're Azania's, because that was pretty broken as well. A lot of people are looking at these changes like, this is a nerf to Saber. Yeah. It's like the only dude who does this stuff. Maybe a couple players who are unknown do this as well, or professional players that I just haven't seen do this. But these are bugs, bro. Like, you should not be able to double headshot somebody. So nobody should be mad about this. Everybody should rejoice, even if you're a Caitlyn player. Like, this is bad for the game that there's bugs in the game that are not intended in balancing the champion. Those are bad. Cool. So you can't do a lot of those machine gun stuff anymore. Cool. Here's some skins. They're okay. The Dragon Slayer Trundle one's badass. The Dragon Slayer Olaf one looks awful. I also don't like the Dragon Slayer Diana. Anyways, guys, that is all. That is all, my friends. We are. I'm gonna turn this music off. Thanks so much for coming by, guys, and we're gonna see you on the next one. We're going to be doing a tier list for LCS teams soon. We're going to be doing a lot of pro play content. I know nobody wants to hear this, but if you're watching this later and I have some other content up, I'll have it up on the screen so that you can click on it. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye. Bye.